Okay, hello everybody. I am back with another review for you. And today I'm going to be talking about what we use for grammar. So we don't use just one thing for grammar. So I wanted to show you the things that we use primarily in our homeschool for grammar. And this would be for my third grader. Technically he's in second grade, but he's doing third grade work pretty much across the board. We haven't progressed through grammar at the same rate that we've progressed through other language arts and math and social studies and science. Grammar is was not, at least for the last couple of years, his strong suit. So grammar and writing are probably the two areas where he may be, considered more like a second grader. But I'll kind of go into that, here in just a minute. But I did want to show you these things. These are primarily the tools that we use. We have Language Smarts Level C. This is actually a grade 2 resource from the Critical Thinking Company. We have Easy Grammar grade 3. This is our primary grammar curriculum. And so I'll be probably focusing a little more on this one than the others. And then we also have Word Fun. And this was a book that was included in the Timberdoodle Level 2 or Grade 2 kit from last year. And we still use this book because it's a really gentle way to introduce different parts of speech. And it's a beautiful book. So I'll go into more of that here in just a minute. But I do want to start with Easy Grammar. Easy Grammar is a grammar program that I became familiar with when my middle son was in 7th grade. He's in 10th grade now. And we used Timberdoodle for the first time in my son's 7th grade year. And he had this in his curriculum kit. It was the Easy Grammar Plus, which is sort of the universal. These are usually graded or organized by grade. This one's grade 3. And they do have Easy Grammar, I think, up through 5th grade. And then starting with 6th grade, you have Easy Grammar Plus, which is a more versatile, universal grammar level. And you can use it for elementary kids who are ready for it, for middle school kids, which I think you're probably the most appropriate for, and also then for high school if you need it. In high school, they do have leveled workbooks for Easy Grammar. But if they need that foundation, and they need a really good foundation, it's mostly review in high school, and it doesn't go into a lot of teaching, so the Easy Grammar Plus is a great place to start if you need the foundational skills. Right. The Easy Grammar grade 3, this is the first level that they make in Easy Grammar. And so when we got Timberdoodle's kits for the last couple of years, they included the first language lessons for the well-trained mind. And although my son really enjoyed those, and they seem to keep his interest, it's really very much the interaction between he and I, the teacher and the student in that book, that really that he really appreciated. But I was finding he wasn't retaining what he was learning, and it was really frustrating because he'd get the concept and then we'd come back to it and he wouldn't remember it. And so it was just, fortunately, they had a lot of review in that program. But when I saw that they were including the first grade or the third grade first language lessons with the Timberdoodle kit, I asked for a substitution because it had a huge thick workbook and a huge thick teacher manual. It looked really intense. It was going into diagramming sentences, and I just didn't want to go through that program with that much depth and still have problems with it. And I had used this with the older one and really liked it, and he had done well with it, so we thought we'd try it. So we had them make the substitution in that kit, and that's one thing Timberdoodle is really good about, is you can substitute items in your kit when you feel like it's necessary. So Easy Grammar's main philosophy in teaching grammar is very different from most of the grammar courses that I've used or seen. They start with prepositions. And so this is the student workbook. I have the teacher guide too, and I'll go through that in just a minute. But this is the first page that you see when you come into the student workbook, is a page of prepositions. And so rather than having to refer to this over and over, I went ahead and you can scan it and laminate it or just print it out or whatever. I had a printable with prepositions on it from our IEW, and it was easier to do that than to scan it, so I just did that. But I printed this out so that, and laminated it so he could refer to it if he needed to. I will tell you that at some point they're going to ask you to memorize these prepositions. And so we did kind of a crash memorization on these, and he did really well with that. I don't think that he would be able to recite them now from memory, but he really does easily recognize a preposition for the most part at this point, and that's the important part. So let me just show you here real quick the teacher manual. This is the teacher manual, and it looks intimidating, but I'll tell you that if you have this book, you really actually don't have to have this book. But for us, it was easier to have the student workbook because the student portion that they work from is then has the answers to that same page on the facing page. Okay, so they do that so that if you tear these out or whatever, the student doesn't have the answers like on the back, right? But if they're working from the book, they have the answers right there. So you either have to cover this up with something that's opaque enough that it's not see-through, or you have to have the binding cut off and then, or rip these pages out. They're not perforated. So that's the one drawback to working from this book, is that you have to take extra steps. And it's really thick. I have a lefty. When we're working on pages like this, you know, his arm gets in the way and the pages start bunching up. So it was really a lot easier for me to just get the student workbook. So I'll come back to this in a minute because there's something in there I want to show you. But this is obviously way easier to work from. I don't have to take the pages out, and it's not so thick that it's cumbersome. So, all right, so we start with prepositions. And the reason they do that is because they really very quickly want them to recognize a prepositional phrase. So they start off, you go through the prepositions, you have the prepositions here, and then they have to finish the prepositional phrase. Eventually they're going to get to the place where they're crossing out the prepositional phrases in all the sentences. And see, they're creating their own prepositional phrases, so they really go into a lot of depth here. They talk about the object of the preposition. Here they're having to come up with their own object of the preposition. And see here, they're crossing them out. And the reason they're crossing them out is because once you cross out the prepositional phrases, which actually are not necessary to complete a sentence, you know, all you need is a subject and a verb to have a sentence. So they make them recognize these right off the bat so they can cross them out and easily find the subject and the verb. So I know that sounds kind of unusual, but it has been so effective. He has learned more about grammar in the first few weeks that we used this program than he did in the 2 years we used the other one. And I know he's older, I know he's more mature, I know these concepts are probably easier to grasp at this point, but still, I mean, like night and day. I mean, I couldn't really see him grasping this concept that quickly in the other program. So that's why we switched to this and why I like it. So again, object of the preposition. Now we're looking at subject and verbs. So once they cross out the prepositional phrase, it becomes really obvious what the subject and the verb is. Then they start throwing a few more complicated sentences in here where, you know, your subject or your verb are separated by prepositional phrases. So again, these are areas that kind of get tricky. So I really, really like this program. They talk about the understood subject when you have commands. These are concepts that I probably wouldn't have thought he would be able to grasp, and he did very easily because of the way they did this. So I really, really, really like this program. So why do we use anything else? Well, because I know some of these other concepts are going to come up later with regard to punctuation and whatnot, and I'll show you the scope and sequence. I can't remember where I found it in here though. It's at the beginning. Okay, so when we were doing the first language lessons for the well-trained mind, I felt like he needed to know things about capitalization and punctuation and contractions and all of that sort of thing. So that's what we used this book for, is to kind of fill in those gaps while we were going through the other book. And this one does address it too, but I still like to revisit those concepts in this other book, so that so it improves his writing and that sort of thing. So they're going to start with prepositions, then go into verbs. They're going to go then into nouns, and then adjectives, conjunctions, interjections, adverbs, types of sentences, pronouns, capitalization. See where we're at here? This is towards the end of the program. And we didn't start this at the beginning of the year because I was intimidated, not by the course, but just by teaching grammar, because we'd struggled with it. So I kept putting it off. I really wish I had started at the beginning of the year. We would have been fine. I know he would have been fine with it, but I didn't. I waited. So we're a little behind in getting through this, but I don't think the concepts are so elementary that we can't just continue this next year. I'm not worried about that. So we'll just continue it till next year, and it's no big deal. But they don't get to punctuation, capitalization, writing friendly letters and notes, and writing sentences and that sort of thing until the end. So I really wanted to bring those concepts in a little quicker. Where you see here daily grams, there's a separate book that you can get called Daily Grams, which just gives extra practice. So like I know when we went through helping verbs, and I do have a list of helping verbs here, I felt like they kind of skimmed the surface with it, and he needed a little more practice with them. So that's where the daily grams come in. But honestly, I think there's enough free worksheets out there on the internet. I did a quick search to see, if we had if there were some helping verb worksheets, and I just printed those off, and we used those. I will say though, what I found interesting was that the worksheets were labeled 5th grade grammar, and they weren't as in-depth as this course is. In fact, I had to change the instructions. All they wanted him to do was circle the helping verbs, and I wanted him to do like the easy grammar wants him to do, and cross out the prepositional phrases, underline your subject once, underline your verb twice, and include the helping verbs in your verb phrase. Okay, so I had to actually give different instructions than what the 5th grade grammar sheet was asking. That's just my little side note there. So anytime I ran into, a list of whatever that I felt like we needed to have reference, I would just print it out, or in this case, I typed it up, because this is the order that I memorized the helping verbs, and I still remember them to this day. So it's just easier for me to have them in an order that I memorize them in, so I can help him memorize them. So we are trying to memorize helping verbs. All right, so this is a list of irregular verbs. And so I'm really thankful that we're going through these, because I've noticed that in his speech, we still have some errors in some of these irregular verbs. Like, what's a good example? Grewed. I've heard that. Yeah, we, so-and-so grewed vegetables in their backyard. So, things like that need to be learned, because they're not typical tenses for these verbs. I have printed this sheet out so he could reference them. So I'm really glad that this easy grammar is going into the irregular verbs, and they're spending quite a bit of time on it too, which I appreciate. So yeah, this is the list. I scanned it and printed it, and then he's working on these, converting them. So, all right. So now let's talk about the Language Smarts. This is a Critical Thinking Company book, and I really, really love Critical Thinking Company products. Do I think this is appropriate for a full grammar curriculum or for the full language course? I think it could be, but the phonics is definitely no, definitely not on the phonics. This stuff, when we started the year last year with this book, I felt like this was too elementary even for that grade, for grade 2. So, if it helps, use it, but I think it's way more effective as a review than a full-on phonics program. So then we've got syllables. Again, that seemed a little elementary at that point as well. So I just use this to skip around in. It has a topical index along with the table of contents, and it gives the page numbers for each lesson, and it organizes it by topic. So when I feel like we want to practice something, I will go into this index and then find an appropriate lesson. We've worked with subject-verb agreement. We worked on verbs. That was, I think, last year when we were struggling with the other program. We worked with pronouns. We've worked with adjectives. We worked with adverbs. This was one of those things. Adverbs are something that they've introduced in his IEW, so we needed to understand what adverbs were. So we've done some exercises with adverbs. Editor-in-chief. I love Editor-in-chief. They have a standalone Editor-in-chief book at various levels. I don't know when they start, grade level wise. I don't know where they start. I know my older son used it. It was something available in one of his Timberdoodle kits. And it was really good. They have to go in and find all the errors, and they give you the list of errors that you're going to find. So you're going to find 6 verb tenses, 2 subject-verb agreement errors, and 2 spelling errors in this paragraph. And then they do the same thing here. So every time you see an editor-in-chief assignment, it's going to give them the list of errors that they're going to need to find, which I find very effective. One other thing that might be considered a negative here with this is this book is that in many cases when they give an assignment, they'll put dashes for each individual letter that's going to be in the answer, and that's a really good clue as to what the answer is going to be without them having to really think about it. So they give a little lesson here about singular and plural, which I find to be wonderful. It makes this book very good for independent learners and or for independent work. But because they give the number of letters in the answer, it's real easy to figure this out. Now this is going from plural to singular, so singular to plural. Okay, see like here, peach, peaches. Okay, well, you don't have to go up here and figure out, well, is it going to be an S or an ES, because you can tell by the number of letters that it's going to be an ES. So in that case, in that situation, I think, that could have been done a little differently, but it is really good for independent learners, and it's a little bit of a self-correcting feature that helps them understand whether or not they have it right. So you can look at it either way, as a plus or a minus, and it depends on your child, I guess, as to whether or not that's a plus or minus. But anyway, what else have we done in here? See, and it goes into some literary terms as well, alliteration. A or an, that's a big one. So this is an effective book, and I haven't felt like we've outgrown it at this point. I actually have level D, which is 3rd grade, and I know they have a level E, 4th grade as well. So I don't know if they have anything above that right offhand, but anyway, I just haven't felt like we've outgrown this one, so that's why I keep working in it. And, when I feel like we have, we'll just go to the level D. So there's that one. This Word Fun is just a really neat book to use for just introducing the different parts of speech. So when we start working with conjunctions, interjections, prepositions, well, we don't need, see, look, prepositions at the bottom of the list. See what I mean? See how it's backwards? You know, the easy grammar is backwards compared to what most, you know, grammar programs seem to do. So, but anyway, you know, we can use this. We still need to really go over adverbs. We still really need to go over adjectives. So I pull this out once in a while to talk about it because it's so beautifully illustrated. It is really a fun book. It gives the definition of the word when it introduces the part of speech, and then it gives a beautiful little illustration with, you know, text that, of course, gives them an opportunity to see examples of what these parts of speech really are. So if you were a noun, you would be a star, a cloud, an astronaut, or the moon. Let's blast off into the world of nouns. And then it talks about other nouns. If you were a noun, you would be easy to spot. You would be a person, a place, or a thing. You could be an astronaut, preparing to fly into space in a spaceship. So it's emphasizing the nouns in these sentences. And anyway, it just goes through here. It's just really well done and fun. So this is also really appropriate for younger students. I believe this came in the 2nd grade kit. So if you're just introducing the concept of, or you're just introducing parts of speech to your child, this is a good one to use for that. Now I have an honorable mention because we haven't used it yet, but I like this. Okay, this is an Evan-Moor grade 3 book, Daily Language Review, grade 3. And the I found this at a thrift store. It was completely unused, clean, no writing in it. And I started looking through it, and woo, that's not intimidating or anything. Let's just go past that. These daily lessons are so short, but they're really good practice, really good review, and a really good way to figure out where the gaps are. So, you know, this is not going to take any time at all to do if you just do one a day. And you could probably fly through, you know, a whole week's worth very quickly with this book as well, if you just wanted to maybe do it once a week or something. So, but what I like about it is that, you know, if they have a gap, it's going to become really evident as they go through these, and they're not going to get overwhelmed by the amount of work because it's so they're so short. So I really want to start using this. So I thought I would just give it an honorable mention here because I can't say from personal experience since we haven't used it yet, but it just looks like it'd be really good. Did you see the one about analogies? I kind of stopped there, but you probably didn't see it. The analogies, elephant is to enormous as mouse is to, and then they have to fill in the blank. So it gives them some thinking skills as well. And anyway, I just thought I would kind of show you this book, Past, Present, or Future. Again, not technically grammar, but it is language related. And my son actually has an IEP for speech, and some of these concepts have been really hard for him to grasp, especially past, present, or future, before and after. I know he used to really struggle with under and over, and he would just mix them up. Like his brain would just mix those concepts up. So for us, I think this is going to be a great tool. So that's what I have for today, and I hope you found this helpful and informative. And I would love for it if you were to subscribe to my channel, and I have much more to bring to you. And I really hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I want to thank you so much for coming over and taking a look and sitting through this video.